Morning and welcome to Needles, Thread and Little Betty. My name's Mandy. I've got this old peg bag and as you can see, it's very tatty, very old. I can't begin to think how many years I've had this. So time for a new one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to still use the little coat hanger that's in the inside that just comes out perfectly fine, nothing wrong with that. And I'm just replacing the fabrics and I'll use this kind of shell as a template. So I've chosen some fabrics, back quarters. I've got this lovely kind of green with all leaves, so that will be on the outer side, the front and the back. And then for the lining, I've just got a plain cream. This is a calico, just from your stash. And as there's a bit of embroidery, which is really, really pretty, but I can't really save it because it's got like old bits of mould on it and things, I've decided to put my own piece of embroidery on the front. So I'm going to use this as a template, as I said. I'm going to draw a piece out on some of my tracing paper. This is just what I use for dressmaking. And we'll get started. This is the template that I made. And if you can see, there's a line that goes across sort of just over halfway up that I've drew. And what that's for is because on the front of the peg bag, there's the gap for you to put the actual pegs into the bag. So I need a smaller panel and then a larger panel put together to make those two pieces for the front. What I've done with this template, it's kind of about roughly ½ inch bigger than what I need. That's to give the seam allowance. So when I'm marking out for the top and the bottom of the front piece, I need to also make sure that that's kind of ½ an inch longer as well, again for that seam allowance. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this on a piece of the fabric for the front. I'm just going to pin that in place. Just take some of these. Problem with you, I put them in the pins in this fancy jar. The problem is they're harder to get out without getting one stuck in your finger. I'll just pop that on there. And because I want to cut along this line, and I don't want to really cut my template, I'm just going to fold it back. Just going to make a crease along the line. There it is. I'm just making that crease along that line. So we're going to cut around this template, and then when it comes to cutting the bottom bit, I'll just fold in that paper back to cut along there. I use the right scissors, they're my paper scissors. Do other people do that? They have separate scissors for paper and for fabric. I think I spoke about that once in one of the older videos. I remember being on a social media site and they were having a debate about whether you should have separate scissors, etc., etc. And somebody had made a comment about people that have separate scissors are snobs. I'm not sure how they come to that conclusion, but hey ho. I have separate scissors, so maybe I'm a snob, I don't know. So I folded that piece of template back, and I'm just cutting along that fold line. I'm going to put a pin in just to hold it down. I mean, this is your seam allowance, so as long as you're not way off, it doesn't matter that much. Okay, so that's, take those two out. So that's the top part. Of the first of the front pieces, just put that to one side. And then what we've got to remember is that this, I already know that that line there is about 1/2 inch longer than it needs to be. So this here needs to be 1/2 inch longer that side. Okay. So another piece of fabric. I'm going to pin that in place. Now, what you can do if you're sort of not sure about yourself is you can just draw another line across there just to mark this piece out and then fold it on that line. But what I will do is I'm just going to kind of guesstimate that 1/2 inch above where I need to cut out, and I'll show you. So I'm just going to cut this shape out. So just snip above about roughly 1/2 inch. It's a bit like if you make the envelope back pillowcases. It's a little bit like that, although this is not going to overlap. This is just so we've got the seam allowance for the gap. Because if we cut it exactly to the shape without giving the seam allowance for the gap, it's going to end up with either raw edges or the piece is going to be too short. The front will be too short for the back. Okay, so I've just kind of left that little bit longer. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is going to cut out the front, the the inner fabrics in exactly the same way as I've got the backs. So I've got, that's part of the back. This will go sort of like that. This will go over the top, but remembering that this is the seam allowance for that. And I'm going to go and cut out this fabric now in exactly the same way. Then I'll come back to you. See you in a minute. Now the pieces are cut how we want them, we're going to just quickly construct the top part. So what we need to do is the top half of the front of the fabric, place that on top of the bottom half of the front of the fabric, right sides together. And I've marked at each of the edges, I've marked around a couple of inches each side using this erasable marker. So I know that I'm going to sew each edge from the edge just to the marker only. Okay, When you get to the marker, if you just double over stitches, just so it doesn't come loose, and that will leave you a gap so that you can get your pegs through. Okay, now to know where to sew for the seam allowance, I've just laid this on top of the back of the outer fabric, and then if you flip the top part over, I've got a couple of pins in, flip the top part over just so that it matches the top of the outer fabric, and just finger press down. That's all you've got to do, is just finger press down. Then when you flip it back, you've got a kind of a fold line as a guide for sewing. Okay, and I've already done the lining fabric in the same way, the front of the lining fabric. So if you look at that, you can see that the edges are sewn and I've got this gap in the middle. This will be attached to the front fabric at some point. If you look at the back of this, where the seam allowance has been attached, I've just opened it out and just pressed it just to make that nice neat edge. Okay, and when you sew these together, the front to the back, they will be sewn around the edges together. Okay, I'll show you that in a minute. Because if you remember, what I said I wanted to do was do some embroidery on the front, and you don't have to, this is lovely fabric, you can leave it as it is, but I wanted to do some embroidery. What I've done is I've made this little motif, if you like, using my embroidery machine. You can hand embroidery if you want to, but I think I needed to play with my embroidery machine, and it got this lovely design. This is a design that's fixed into the machine. It's not one that I've uploaded. And I've put that on a piece of the lining fabric, the same, and I've just neatly pressed the edges over so we've got no raw edges. And what I'm going to do, and you can do this after you've sewn this or before, it doesn't matter, is I'm just going to place that in the middle. I'll just move the back of it out the way first. I'm going to place that in the middle, whichever way up you want to do, depending on what design you've done. I'm just going to measure to make sure that it's in the middle at the size. That's more or less spot on. Yeah, it's first time. And same with the top, probably needs to come down a little bit. I mean, it's up to you where you place it. If you're doing this, it's entirely up to you how you decorate the front. I'll just double check. I've just moved that a little bit as I've moved it down. And that should be more or less right. Yeah. So the next thing I'm going to do is just pin this in place. The same as if you've made anything with pockets, just pin it on in the same way. The only thing you wouldn't do is leave a gap at the top as you would with a pocket, but just going to pin it on. And then once that's in place, I'm just going to do some neat stitches just close to the edge all the way around in a square, and then that will just fix that pattern to your outer fabric at the front. So I'm going to go off and do that, and then I'll show you what we're going to do next. For this next part, I want to join the fronts to the backs of each of the fabrics together. So I'm placing them both together, right sides together. And what we want to do is sew all the way around the outside, but leaving a gap at the top in the middle for the top of the coat hanger to go through. So to find out where that middle is, I've just folded the fabrics in half, made a finger press crease at the top in the middle, folded them back, and then you can see where the crease is, and that's the centre of where we want the gap at the top. So I'm just going to measure out about 2 inches at the top where that gap is, inch either side of the crease, and just mark that with my erasable marker. Okay. So when we sew, we know we're sewing from one end all the way around to the other end and leaving that gap in the middle. Okay. So I'm just going to pin these together, the pieces together. Okay. And I'll put that to one side. So I've already done this with the lining of the fabric. So as you can see, I've sewn all the way around. I've done about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You can do a little bit less. It all depends on what size you want to have it. And what I've done afterwards is I've trimmed my seam round. I've just used pinking-shears just to help stop fraying. And where you've got the corners, just snip off the corners. That helps for turning it round. And I've also got that gap at the top that I need for the top of the coat hanger. So I'm going to pull this the right side round. Just push your corners out neatly. You can do this with your finger, or you've got a little tool to do it with. Just make sure that nothing goes through the fabrics. That's it. And what you'll finish up with is a piece like that. So you've got your envelope that you made earlier, and you've got a gap at the top. That's for the top of the coat hanger to go through. So we're going to do exactly the same with this piece, and then I'll come back to you and show you how we join in this piece to that piece. I'll see you in a minute. So the final part, I'll just bring you down to the machine. Level you up. So we've got the two bag parts, the inner and the outer fabrics. So the inner needs to be inside out, and what we're going to do is push that inside the outer fabric, the outer part of the bag, which is the right side out. So push it in, push your corners up together. I'm just making sure that both your openings are at the front. Okay, so line your openings up, give it a bit of a shape, sometimes that helps. And we need to pin these linings together, the openings together. So the lining of the fabric and the outer fabric are pinned neatly around the kind of envelope hole. Pop some pins in to secure it. I just have to manipulate it a bit to get it level. Ideally, you want the two, where the two ends have met here, ideally you want both of those to marry up. Just pop one in each of the ends. so that you've got them pinned together like that. So what we're going to do now, that one's just coming out. What we're going to do now is we're just going to sew near to the edge a stitch all the way around the opening of the bag. I'm just going to take my extension tape off, and I'm just going to pop this over the ends of my machine, just making sure that they're lined up, and find somewhere to start sewing. Pop my needle in, and you want it close to the edge, not right on the edge. If you do it right on the edge, the chances are your needle might just slip off the end and then you're going to have a little hole. But just to the edges, near to the close to the edge. Get your words out. Oh, crikey. Right, and just so, nice and slow. There's no race. Do it too fast and you just miss the edge. You're going to have a hole, or it's going to just look wonky. And what you need to make sure is that you're catching both pieces of the fabrics. I've got pins manoeuvring all over the place here. Let's take that one out of the way. And just easing the bag around the machine as you go along. Now it is a little bit tricky when you get to the corners, but that's fine. If you need to, you can just lift your foot up and just manoeuvre it that way. Take that pin out. And you can, of course, if you want to, you can do base stitches all the way around, just to hold it in place while you're sewing. You don't have to have all these clunky pins in the way if you don't want to. Let's move that one out. Move that one out. I'll just lift my foot up a minute just to make sure that, yeah, that's still in place. Move that pin out the way. I think I'll move that one out as well. Just round that corner. And all the way back to where you started. Just go over where you started a couple of stitches and then do a couple of back stitches. And there's a little bit there to trim off. Okay, so that's that part done. So the two fabrics are now joined together. Now the top opening part, you can leave that if you want to, or you can do the same again. I think what I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to do a few stitches. I'm not going to go round like I did with the envelope here. I'm just going to do a few down each side, and that will just help hold it in place. I'm just going to pop a pin in one side, just pulling the other side back. Making sure that I've got, it's very fiddly because it's such a small gap. And what I don't want to do is catch both sides. So I've got my foot holding it down now. I'm just going to do a few. Take that pin out. Snip off any loose ends. And a few that side. Once you've done one side, the other side's a little bit easy because you're not pulling it away from the lining fabric. Just right at the edge. Again, just snipping off any straggly bits. I can neaten that up afterwards. And there you have that top bit done as well. So the actual bag part now is finished. All you need to do is put in your coat hanger. It's just a bit of a manoeuvre it around. Bring you up. And there you have it. One peg bag. The next thing I'm going to do is go and fill it with pegs and let's see it in action.